Patch 11.2 managed to have a mostly good start despite one of the most monumental scripts in Blizzard history. I'm kind of playing that up though, so don't worry. Hey, it's Soul, and this is Warcraft Weekly, downplaying your concerns since 2015. You can help support the channel by liking this video, subscribing for more WoW coverage, and catching me where I'm live. Patch 11.2 dropped with a not-so-small number of surprises, the first being realms coming up hours before their usual scheduled start date. I don't know about you, but whether it's late or early, if you don't have realms up on time, that's Blizz breaking their promise, and I'm kidding. Next surprise, the game happened to be mostly stable. By that I mean, of course, there were problems. There was, tons of lag as players slammed into Crush for the first time. There was world boss woes and plenty of bugs, but I was keeping an ear open for, the good stuff that gets the clickbait, right? I'm talking about banks getting nuked and currencies getting deleted when they shouldn't be, real game-breaking stuff. Over the past few days, I've been listening on stream, watching what people are saying, and I've been feeling that, that usual excitement when gamers are unleashed, like dogs being let out into the park. Lots of folks talking up their accomplishments and how high of a delve they've climbed to, asking questions like, is there a point in farming up to 11s, to questions about the cloak, what they should do in the vault, and of course, where's the content? It's only been a few days, but I say with some confidence that these first few days have overall been good. But there are quirks I want to point out in today's weekly. They're not big problems, but I'm going to try to create a narrative. I'm going to make an argument that these small bugs or, these issues have bigger meanings behind them. Spoiler alert, it's still not a big deal. They're not that consequential. I just want to get your thoughts. On patch day, gamers were slamming content, doing everything we could to prepare for the upcoming season, get our dopamine fix in, or get a little bit of both. And we, or at least I, learned things that we didn't discover on the PTR to my pleasant surprise, like, hey, we can get veteran track gear from Nightfall and even horrific visions. That's what they meant by the whole season refresh of rewards. This helped to balance other activities like Theater Troop, Spreading the Light, and older events having their rewards nerfed. It's not hard to see why some players got tilted over that, because that feels counter to what Blizzard's been trying to do with these chests, where you can choose the activity you want to do and still get similar rewards. I think the difference is that at least for the short term, min-maxers who want the most chances at the best gear are going to be strategizing a bit between outdoor content and delves and mythic zeros. Overall, we can get more coffer keys with 6 per week, but I wonder if we're going to see coffer key shard reward things from world quests next week. So here we are plodding along with the preseason stuff when I happened to check out of curiosity. I was wondering if we can fight the new Delve nemesis Ky'veza right now. Even though I can claim with the tears, I didn't have the quest to defeat her, and at points during the PTR at least, I couldn't enter the room where the boss was. But on live realms, I could. Unfortunately, with it being the first day, the fight was really bugged. It felt pretty much impossible to do in its current state. Before even that though, a question popped up in my head. I was thinking to myself, why am I able to fight the Delve boss now during the preseason? Because we're missing something. We're missing the very reason we're looking for in the first place, the season storyline. So it's kind of weird. Anyway, later, and we're still less than 24 hours into the patch, I beat Ky'veza in her normal difficulty because hotfixes apparently came in, and now the fight is doable. And it's pretty fun to learn and master, but when I defeated her, I got no reward, no prize, no sudden quest to turn in, just nothing. So I thought to myself, okay, I'm just going to do this after the season starts when I think it's going to count, because maybe this is a bug. Since then, though, another hotfix came in, adding the achievement and other accolades, but still no quest. So the vibe I get, and that's all it is, it's just a vibe, is one of two things happened. One, Ky'veza wasn't meant to be fought at all until next week, but some sort of bug allowed us to fight her, and Blizzard was like, we can't put the genie back in that bottle, so instead they're just improvising with these changes. Two, this was a mid-development change, and it is intended, they're okay with us fighting Ky'veza day 1 of the patch, but the implementation with the quest, that was bug 2, that was just a mess, and it'll resolve itself next week. Now, personally, I think it's the first reason. I think it's a bug, a late discovery, and now Blizzard's just picking up the pieces. Now, was this a big deal? No. Maybe a bit confusing, but the actual problem, no, because this was nothing compared to what happened later that day of the launch. Multiple folks reported a leak or an accidental reveal of the Midnight expansion bundles, while had corroborated the base and heroic versions but couldn't independently verify the Epic Edition screenshots that were shown, so we've got a mix of confirmed and highly plausible accidental reveals of the bundles. Now, if it wasn't for Midnight already being revealed back in 2023, and the name drop-ins and like the talking about housing and so on and so forth, this would have been a catastrophe, right? Marketing plans would just be ruined, momentum and hype, it's all jacked up, and there'd be no room for Blizzard to like get in front of the conversation, leaving folks like us to commentate, and I'll get to that in a bit. Now, this is still bad, somebody's in a lot of trouble, but it's not so bad, and maybe that's why the secrecy around this wasn't as tight. I don't know how their storefront works, but this thing that happened with Blizzard, it's not just a huge screw up, it was extremely preventable. Now, once again, is this a big deal? No, not really, because we know Midnight's coming out, we speculated what's coming for months, and we're aware of certain patterns that Blizzard has with its WoW bundles and monetization. We're just confirming what we already know, with the exception of, some of the details of the Epic bundle, but later we're going to react to it as if it's, pretty much confirmed or real. It's things like this, though, that we can add to the pile of complaints. Small things like loose threads and sudden changes in story, the picking up and dropping off of plot lines, armies chilling on the beach, numerous bugs that were mostly fixable, that, all these things continue to draw a narrative that WoW is moving forward like an unstoppable train, but it's moving regardless of the condition of this train or its passengers. I can actually get behind the idea of comparing the War Within release to Warlords of Draenor as an expansion that was kind of sort of left hanging in favor of what's ahead with Midnight and The Last Titan. Only this time, and to Blizzard's credit, the War Within is being handled much better than Warlords was, as that felt like unceremoniously abandoned. It might not be saying much, but I'm still finding myself pretty happy with how the expansion's playing out, and with the big swings that Blizzard's taking with their overall design. Giving endgame to solo players, better catch-ups, and lots of activities to change up the routine. But what do you think? Alright, let's circle back and talk about the bundles, shall we? I gotta say up front, we shouldn't be surprised by most everything we're seeing here, especially the early access to housing. It's been staring right at us on the roadmap. Those of you who've been following me since player housing was announced last November saw this from a mile away, like seriously. It'd be wild to think that Midnight would launch before the end of 2025, but the team did say player housing would come with Midnight. So I have a feeling, just like how allied races were accessible via pre-order of Battle for Azeroth, player housing will be available for people who pre-order Midnight. Now, if that happens, that's like kind of insidious, right? It's a little bit dirty, but it'll work. Just take my money, seriously. Nothing's changed. We can almost rest easy knowing all versions of Midnight are going to include early access to player housing. I remember at first I thought only the Epic Edition would include that, but I've since softened up to I guess it should be every version. The base and Heroic Edition are going to include a character boost, including reputation, probably similar to Dragonflight, meaning new accounts are going to get a serious hookup, and there's some bonus Traders Tender. The Heroic Edition will also include a transmog set and flying mount themed after the Dragonhawks associated with the Silvermoon area. At $50 and $70, it's kind of consistent with previous expansions, but it's still not that cheap. And mathematically, with these 18 or so month-long expansions, we're paying even more per year for World of Warcraft. Like, technically, it's like a whole fraction of a WoW token's worth, if you could believe that. The Epic Edition is obviously what's generating the most buzz. The tender bonus alone is considerable. That's like 2 months worth of tender for an average month. We get an invite to the beta, we get 3-day early access to Midnight, a month of game time, and so far, exclusive housing decor, fountains, and portraits of who are likely to be central characters to the Midnight story. Now, there are a few things to unpack here. Let's start with early access. It was a very controversial announcement for The War Within. It's going to be for Midnight, no doubt. Seeing it a second time, though, is a good indicator. Early access proved to be a successful idea from Blizzard, and it's not hard to see why. On the money side, I guess, early access benefits, they sell, from the cosmetic perks to the advantage for those who want to level lots of characters or get a leg up on professions and selling stuff. On the dev and engineering side, it can be argued having 2 launches will spread the stress that's put on servers. Not to say that the War Within launches, plural, not to say that they were smooth either, including some really big problems with the auction house, but in hindsight, the War Within, well, I guess it would have been worse otherwise. Detractors have made some effective points, like the gold making advantages that I mentioned, suggesting that in order to compete, you must pay the additional fee. Left unchanged, folks like me are going to go into early access with lessons learned from the War Within launch and possibly an even greater advantage than before. So I wonder what sorts of changes are going to happen to make this divide not feel as bad. And having 2 launches is a double-edged sword. It lessens the impact of having 2 launches, but it also lessens that feeling of the celebratory hype. Some accuse early access of being the real launch for the privileged, followed by the late launch for the poor, or, something stupid like that, whatever. In fairness, some look at early access a little bit differently. It's not necessarily about jumping into the game early, it's being able to jump into the game when it opens on a weekend. I saw a lot of feedback from gamers happy to get into early access because normally they can't make it for a late afternoon or early evening launch on a Monday here in the US, or they basically have obligations during the week and don't have time to play until the weekend. So those folks got their first crack at being day one gamers, woohoo. The Epic Edition also includes more mounts and pets and Trader's Tender, and eventually beta access. And now we gotta look at the new kinds of bonuses we get from the Epic Edition player housing decor. Now once again, this is not super verified, and even then, it could change with the announcement. There's already a lot being said about the choices being given out, and I gotta chime in at least a little bit. Most of the decor is outdoorsy. We get a gazebo, we get a fountain, and a light and void theme, which fits the expansion, that's cool. And then there are these portraits of the most functional family in Warcraft, plus their nasty but really hot neighbor. The chatter I'm hearing mostly revolves around the bias towards Alliance-aligned characters and pulls on this ongoing narrative of the Alliance once again being favored over the Horde. Now personally, I think this portrait thing, I think it's giving it too much weight, too much credit, right? Consider how the Earthen were pretty prominent in the War Within marketing and, well, where are they at now? This is before considering how the story shifts have gone. Some folks are 100% going to buy the Epic Edition because they want this decor, which is probably going to be available only in this bundle. And then, maybe whenever Blizzard gets around to relaunching the digital goods in the shop because they have a history of doing that. No matter what decor they give out though, it's going to be met with some sort of complaint. If the decor was like super neutral, it'd be boring. If it leans in any major character's direction, which it is, oh, faction bias. Again, some people are going to see this as a must-have because it fits their vibe, or it's a necessary +1 to their collection. Now here's what I can envision though, let's pretend we're in the pre-patch period, so housing probably opens up for everyone by this point, pre-order or not. I'm willing to bet during that month there'll be more portraits available on the trading post, and we might have all this extra tender to play with to buy the portraits we want. Big maybe, but I can see it. Now I've got a somewhat related question for you all, there's no wrong answers. Would it be better for the game and story to go back to where the Horde and Alliance were often included in story developments to give them that bit of a spotlight, reminders that the Horde and Alliance exist and have influence, and of course to keep the score mostly even between fans? Now personally I have takes, I have really strong takes, but I'm going to shut up. I don't want to distract from the conversation, I just want to hear what you've got to say. That's the show, and it's all going down next week with the launch of Season 3. Activities are going to start opening up, and we're going to learn the post-raid story, taking us that much closer to how Midnight's going to go down, and we're only like a few weeks away from finding out the rest anyway. So I hope you'll join me here and on Twitch, where I'll co-stream the Gamescom opening ceremony stuff and react to everything we learn. I want to give a huge thanks to everyone who dropped by the stream and comments and everywhere else with kind words to say about the 11.2 overview I collaborated with Blizzard on. And of course, thanks to Blizzard for giving me the opportunity. Y'all look great, and now you can officially call me a paid shill. Also, thanks to everyone who's been hanging out on the live streams lately. I really appreciate the company. Please come back for more. A huge thanks to our fellow patrons, as well as you, viewer. You made it to the end. You fed the algorithm. Now, if you could please like the video, subscribe for more WoW coverage, catch me live, and I'll catch you later. Stay safe, stay healthy, and stay breezy.